Hi friends! You like my haircut? Isn't she fancy? Ooh! Alright, let's just get into this, okay? What's going on with Balenciaga? We got lawsuits. We got accusations of various severity. We've got a whole ass statement from Kim K. We've got a lot of drama, is what I'm saying. Before we get into this, I want to acknowledge that I'm going to be tiptoeing around some of the topics in this video because I'm trying not to get demonetized, okay? To set some ground rules, when I say CP, the letter CP, you're gonna follow what I'm saying, right? Where C is the word child and P is a word that rhymes with corn, so I don't have to actually say it. I can just say CP. Great. Are we all on the same page? Awesome. Okay, so like a couple days ago, I was confused about what the heck is going on with Balenciaga. I saw a couple pictures, I was like, what's the big deal? I don't get it. And then I started unraveling it, and it's a bit of a mess, okay? So let's just break it down. Here's the timeline. November 16th, so a couple weeks ago, Balenciaga releases its holiday ad campaign. It's the busiest time of year. It's time when people are buying gifts. Balenciaga wants in on that because rich people buy gifts of Balenciaga for other people, apparently. So they have their Balenciaga gift shop campaign, which showcases giftable products of many different types, okay? And the concept was that the products would all be staged around children wearing apparently the Balenciaga children's clothing line, which, like, I had to pause when I realized that some people are dress your snotty kid in Balenciaga rich. That's the next level. That's something else. Anyway, so the kids, they're dressed in Balenciaga, they're posed around a bunch of stuff. And these photos honestly looked a little weird to me until I learned that it was meant to be a continuation of the conceptual line of photos by photographer Gabriel Galimberti. He did this photo series called Toy Stories, which you can go to his website and look at it. It features photos of children surrounded by their toys. And these children come from all over the world. He traveled to a bunch of different places. Some of them are wealthy Americans with a ton of toys, and some of them are kids in other countries with like a single stuffed animal, which I think is a powerful series that says a lot about consumerism, but it's also made even more poignant given that Balenciaga saw that series and was like, wow, look at all those poor kids. Anyway, what if we did that? But instead of it being disgusting and poor, we did it with rich kids. What if we did that? What if we took the poor kids out and then just did rich kids, and instead of doing those sad little gross animals, we like put our fancy Balenciaga products in it? Wouldn't that be cool? That's where Balenciaga went with it. And I think that this context is important both because the campaign, frankly, on its own looks kind of weird out of context, in my opinion. And the photos look kind of disjointed, and I can't really tell what they're trying to sell, if anything. I don't know. I guess it's supposed to be art. I'm clearly much too poor to understand. Thank you so much to my partner on today's video, Ritual. It's never too late to start a new ritual and incorporate a healthy habit into your routine. Building a lasting habit takes time and consistency, and Ritual is giving you 20% off your first month towards building those healthy habits. And they have products for different life stages. Essential vitamins for women, probiotics to keep your gut happy. And I'm excited about their vegan protein powder. Ooh. I've been trying to hit the gym more, you know, bulk up a little, and Ritual's protein shake helps me do just that. Their Essential Protein 18+, it contains all 9 essential amino acids, which creates a complete amino acid profile that helps you build lean, strong muscle mass. It also helps satisfy your appetite and supports bone health. And it's delicious, okay? Delicious. Ritual's Essential Protein contains 20 grams of vegan pea protein. It also contains choline to help brain health and to fill dietary gaps. And like all Ritual products, their vegan protein powder is gluten-free, vegan, soy-free, and formulated with non-GMO ingredients. There's also no added sugar or sugar alcohols. It contains no major allergens, artificial sweeteners, or colors, and it's sweetened with a combination of fermented sugarcane and monk fruit. Fun! What's cool is the vanilla flavor is made using vanilla beans direct from farmer to table, which is sustainably harvested in Madagascar. And the supply chain for this protein powder, fully traceable. It's derived from peas grown in the United States of America using regenerative farming processes. And what's cool is this protein powder is available in daily formulas for those who are 18 plus, also for those who are 50 plus, and for those who are pregnant, as well as postpartum. So it really supports you no matter what stage of life you're in. Get a massive 20% off your first month with Ritual by going to the link in the description below and using my special code. Use this special code at checkout to help fuel your body the right way. Thank you again to Ritual for partnering with me on today's video. Okay, so there's specifically 2 photos of children amongst Balenciaga products, and both of those children are holding these teddy bear purses. And the teddy bears are wearing leather straps. And I will admit that the straps look bondagey. But I also will say wearing leather straps like that is kind of a fashionable thing to do these days. It's not just for bondage anymore. It's also something that people wear over their external clothing as a fashion statement. And so I assume in Balenciaga's head, they were like, this is trendy right now. Let's make a teddy bear purse out of it. I don't know. I don't know what happens in rich people's heads. I don't pretend to know, okay? So they were trying for fashion, but it turned out to be a bit suggestive. And then one TikToker saw this, picked up on it, and then made a series of videos about this, accusing Balenciaga of sexualizing these kids, which is bad, okay? And then, especially in one of the images, the kid is not surrounded by toys, but instead is surrounded by wine glasses and other glasses that in which you would probably drink alcohol out of. So it's further kind of putting the children in these adult situations that seem inappropriate. And one of the glasses, I just wanted to pause and point out, there was this horrifying looking glass that I don't know what that is. Is that a collaboration with Monster Energy drink? I looked it up. It's a mug and it's real, and it's actually for sale on the Balenciaga website for $560. I hate it. This is that phenomenon where rich people like to dress up as pores. And when they do it, it's chic and edgy. But the people who actually are stopping at a gas station to get a Monster Energy drink on the way to their like blue collar or service industry jobs, yeah, they're the ones wiping the shit off the bottom of the rich people's boots who are buying this $560 Balenciaga, vaguely Monster Energy brand looking mug. To drink what out of? I don't know. Anyway, I could make a whole video on that, so let me stop myself right now before I get on too much of a tangent. So, people were mad because they saw the leather straps on the bears and they thought they were very suggestive, especially when combined with a kid being surrounded by wine glasses. And it turns out that when anything even whiffs of CP or suggests it, people get pretty fucking horrified. Turns out. So that all happened November 16th. Then on November 21st, a few days later, they released their spring 2023 campaign that was like office themed, like messy office themed, like high powered business people themed. So they released this photo featuring this Adidas collab bag on top of a pile of papers strewn about. And there at the very bottom, if you zoom in real close, you can see the text of a Supreme Court decision. Not just any Supreme Court decision though, a very specific one called United States v. Williams. This is a 2008 Supreme Court case. It was fought over an act that prohibited the offer for sale of CP, even if the images themselves weren't of actual children. Like in the case of a young adult who looks like a child, or a computer-generated, AI-generated image of a child. The fear being that computer-generated images will become so convincing that someone with CP depicting an actual child might be able to get away with it because the government wouldn't be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the kid in the photo is a real human who is really underage and not like the product of AI, for example. In that case, the Supreme Court upheld the law, saying that even if someone is offering to sell CP and it's not actually CP, like it's an adult or it's computer generated, that is still a crime. Now, this decision was not unanimous by the Supreme Court. It was a 7-2 decision with Judge Soter dissenting and Ruth Bader Ginsburg joining the dissent, meaning that she did not think that it should be illegal for someone to offer to sell CP when the actual photos they're offering aren't really CP. Which I know is like, what? RBG. That seems scandalous. And I'm sure it's something that conservatives have used to be like, RBG loves pervs and groomers, because They like to do that. But the issue really is about the First Amendment. The Supreme Court is very careful about the types of expression that it prohibits, because the First Amendment is a broad protection of speech and expression that we value very highly in this country. But there are a few very specific and narrow exceptions to the First Amendment's broad protection of freedom of speech and expression. CP is one of these exceptions. You cannot make or sell CP. CP is not protected under the First Amendment. It's technically a photo, which is a type of expression, but the courts have determined that public interest requires that that type of expression be curbed. The First Amendment does not protect CP. And the more that the protections that the First Amendment grants are chipped away, the more that it could erode First Amendment protections. So I think where Soder and RBG were coming from was extreme caution against banning expression that would otherwise be protected. Like a dirty photo of a real consenting adult is protected. So if the person is offering to sell CP and it turns out to be a picture of an adult, or AI generated, so not a picture of any human at all and just computer created, and then that person who is offering for sale these pictures is then prosecuted for the photos, then it's technically prosecuting them for an expression that isn't technically CP and therefore is technically protected by the First Amendment. You know what I mean? And once you start saying, like, in this context, this type of expression isn't allowed, then you're chipping away at the First Amendment's protections. And we don't like that as a general rule. I'm not really sure that I agree with RBG on this one, but I think it's a good depiction of how First Amendment absolutism, something that conservatives like Tucker Carlson and someone like Elon Musk espouse themselves to be First Amendment absolutists, that can be really tricky. A really tricky thing to navigate when you start talking about CP. Because if you really are a First Amendment absolutist, then you think that no one should ever be punished for any expression, and that would include CP. See how we have a problem here? So we're balancing First Amendment rights with the public interest. And in this case, the case that is in the background of this photo in this Balenciaga shoe, they decided that yes, this type of trying to sell CP, even if it's not technically CP, but maybe looks like CP, that is illegal. It's not protected under the First Amendment, and people can be prosecuted for doing that. Okay, so it's a little complicated, but the point is the Balenciaga photo shows a document with the opinion from the Supreme Court printed on it, and that opinion has to do with CP. To be fair, it's a very, very small portion of the photo. And the only reason that anyone knew what it even was is because some people who had a lot of time on their hands, I guess, were on the internet and like zoomed into the photo and figured out where the text was from. And then they put it on the internet. And then of course, conservative pundits like Tucker Carlson snatched onto that because, as we talked about in my last TikTok reaction video, which you should watch after this, conservatives are like extra intense about CP in a way that is partially valid. We should all be intense about CP, but their way is so intense that it also smacks of homophobia and has origins in QAnon conspiracy theories, including one where an international underground cabal of child predators runs our banking system. I don't know, you can look into it. Just watch my video, I go into it more. So the conservatives latch onto this. And then it's also discovered that in the background of one of the photos on this business-inspired shoot were some art books stacked, one of which prominently showed the name Michael Boremans. Michael Boremans is a Belgian painter, and he is known for depicting children in violent and suggestive ways in his art. And his art book and his name were very obvious and deliberately placed towards the camera in the background of this specific photo. So because these controversial right-wing pundits grasped onto this story, it started trending on Twitter with the hashtag Balenciagagate and Balenciaga groomers, because I love that word. And more people started noticing this kind of weird conglomeration of disturbingly related coincidences in these two photo shoots and campaigns by Balenciaga. And so they start calling for Balenciaga to explain itself and to apologize and remove the campaigns, because frankly it is a little bit fishy that all of this happened all at the same time. And because of this, the day after Balenciaga dropped that business-themed photo shoot, they pulled that campaign and the gifting campaigns and apologized publicly. And a few days later, they issued another statement. Let's just read Balenciaga's entire statement, because it's kind of an example of when PR and the legal department work together to try to solve a very big blowout like this. So their statement says, "We would like to address the controversies surrounding our recent ad campaigns. We strongly condemn child abuse. It was never our intent to include it in our narrative. The two separate ad campaigns in question reflect a series of grievous errors for which Balenciaga takes responsibility. The first campaign, the gift collection campaign, featured children with plush bear bags dressed in what some have labeled BDSM-inspired outfits. Our plush bear bags and the gift collection should not have been featured with children. This was a wrong choice by Balenciaga, combined with our failure in assessing and validating the images. The responsibility for this lies with Balenciaga alone." The second separate campaign for spring 2023, which was meant to replicate a business office environment, included a photo with a page in the background from a Supreme Court ruling, United States v. Williams, 2008, which confirms as illegal and not protected by freedom of speech the promotion of child pornography. All the items included in this shooting were provided by third parties that confirmed in writing that these props were fake office documents. They turned out to be real legal papers, most likely coming from the filming of a television drama. The inclusion of these unapproved documents was the result of reckless negligence for which Balenciaga has filed a complaint. We take full accountability for our lack of oversight and control of the documents in the background, and we could have done things differently. While internal and external investigations are ongoing, we are taking the following actions. We are closely revising our organization and collective ways of working. We are reinforcing the structures around our creative processes and validation steps. We want to ensure that new controls mark a pivot and will prevent this from happening again. We are laying the groundwork with organizations who specialize in child protection and aims at ending child abuse and exploitation. We want to learn from our mistakes and identify ways we can contribute. Balenciaga reiterates its sincere apologies for the offense we have caused and extends its apologies to talents and partners. The reason I wanted to read through that whole thing was because this clearly was very carefully worded and very carefully vetted by their legal department, unlike the ad campaign itself, apparently. Though, I will say, I doubt that legal is often included in oversight of the final approval of ad campaigns. Usually, unless there's questions of like copyright or trademark usage, I'd imagine that legal's main involvement in a campaign shoot like this would be in drafting and overseeing the contracts of the talent and the creators on set, not necessarily reviewing the pictures afterwards to make sure there aren't any possible legal issues, other than maybe copyrights and trademarks again. Their PR department, on the other hand, does have some explaining to do, frankly. Who saw this ad campaign and was like, yep, yeah, that's fine. That being said, though, the one with the Supreme Court ruling in the background, frankly, I don't know who even picked up on the wording on that tiny page in that image. I'd imagine that the set designers probably maybe didn't even realize what the document was about. I mean, they probably don't have a legal background. They probably didn't even think to check what the subject matter of this lawsuit was about because it was going to be mixed with so many other things in the background of a shoot that was featuring a specific item. So they might not have even considered what the lawsuit was about if they should read through it, or if they would even have understood while reading through it what it was about. Well, they probably would have understood it was about CP because it does mention it a lot. But you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of moving parts. I don't know if they would have thought far enough through to be like, what is this lawsuit about that is printed on these papers that we're putting at the very bottom of this pile of stuff that we're including in this shoot? Especially if this really was just random documents from the filming of a television drama, as Balenciaga's statement says. And the words are so small, I imagine that the people reviewing it didn't even think that anyone else would look to figure out what the writing was from, you know? That being said, though, it is an interesting situation that the bondage teddy bears and the CP case were both featured in back-to-back campaigns, plus that art book in the background, featuring that art by the controversial artist who uses children in, we'll say, scandalous ways in his art. That is a lot of coincidences. And it could just be that. It could just be a perfect storm of really unfortunate coincidences all happening at once. I saw a TikTok by a federal investigator. Yeah, sorry, I'm citing TikToks as a source right now, so sue me. She said that as a federal investigator, one of the tactics that they use when investigating and they see something that seems fishy is to take a beat and do two things. One, assume a nefarious intent, and then assume a benevolent intent. So a nefarious intent would be Balenciaga thought that hinting at CP would be edgy or ironic or would add to their campaign in a way that I guess would sell more items. Maybe if we assume a benevolent intent, this photographer is known for photographing children. They put the teddy bear bag with the kids because it made sense in their head, and they didn't take a step back and think that the overall vibe was suggestive in a way that people would probably object to. And that CP IP lawsuit in the background of the photo just happened to be the paperwork that they had found from the filming of this television show, and they didn't think twice about what could possibly be the subject matter of this lawsuit, because lawsuits are usually boring and they just wanted like some text to fill it up, and they didn't think anyone would zoom in and read it. And maybe the art book in the background was similarly just a prop that they didn't investigate or think twice about. They just wanted this art book. Hey, it's a book about art. This person in this office is really classy, so they buy Balenciaga, and so we want to communicate that with our potential buyers. Okay, so once you assume nefarious intent and assume benevolent intent, then look and see if there's any proof for either one of those. Balenciaga's words are that they did not intend anything by it. And at this point, we haven't really seen hard evidence that they had nefarious intent. So because of that, this federal investigator said, if you can't find evidence to show the nefarious one, maybe take a beat, maybe take a second. Which I thought this was a great lesson for everyone generally, especially in this current age of just copious amounts of conspiracy theories. Because conspiracy theories at the end of the day are assumptions of nefarious intent without usually any evidence to back it up. So if we could all apply what this federal investigator said to our everyday life, that might be helpful for all parties involved. If you know who I'm talking about, please tag her below so I can cite to her, because I found it really insightful. All of that being said, however, a pal of mine used to be an art director for a very large national company. She was the person who oversaw the product photo shoots and campaigns for a segment of this company. And so because this subject matter is outside my wheelhouse, I texted her about it to see what she thought. And she said it would be highly unlikely for an art director, stylist, or creative manager to have missed any detail like that. For a photo shoot, especially for a brand of this caliber, there are so many people involved, and someone somewhere should have picked up on it. Each shot would take a couple of hours to shoot too, so in that amount of time, you'd notice something off. So there were many people sitting there for a long time putting that photo shoot together and taking those photos, and none of them said, hey, maybe putting children with this kind of bondage suggestive bag doesn't look good. Or, hey, you know what? Who's that artist? Who's that name that's being shown there on that artist book? Like, maybe that art is too problematic and we should find like a Monet or something a bit more neutral. Or, hey, what do those words say? Should we make sure that it's not something inappropriate? All the people, this went through so many people's hands, so much oversight, so much review, and yet it still came out the way that it did. So that's either like really awful oversight and like sloppy work, or proof that it was done on purpose. I don't know either way. And now Balenciaga is suing 𝗧𝗏 and set designer 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗧, in a contract dispute and seeking $25 million in damages. This is a matter that frankly will probably settle out of court for probably less than $25 million, just based on how lawsuits typically play out. But they're suing specifically about the image with the court documents in the background, saying that the documents were placed there maliciously, or at the very least extraordinarily recklessly, which kind of plays into what I was just saying about how there are so many people on set and so many people that have to see this and no one noticed it. Maybe that was malicious, maybe it was extraordinarily reckless. So it appears that Balenciaga seems to suspect that they might have been sabotaged on purpose, according to the summons. Now, of course, Balenciaga had to officially sign off on the images, so whose recklessness would be the subject of a court case in this setting? 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 celebrities used for photo shoots. He also claims that people from Balenciaga were present on the shoot and worked on the editing of every photograph. Basically, again, it sounds like this campaign went through so many hands and no one paused to be like, should we second guess that? Not to mention that any contracts that Balenciaga would have signed with third-party vendors like photographers and set designers, etc., all those contracts would have had very well-drafted clauses guaranteeing Balenciaga the final right of approval for any image that made its way into a campaign. Because that's just how these contracts are written, and they're gonna want to guarantee that they're the ones that are gonna approve any image before it becomes part of a campaign that they release on their website, you know? Which is likely a very good defense for the defendants that Balenciaga is now suing. Now, this lawsuit is likely a tactic by Balenciaga to try to clear its name in the eyes of the public and of its famous endorsers like Kim Kardashian, for example, of any wrongdoing. They're saying, see, we didn't do it. We're innocent. We were taken advantage of. It was their recklessness, not us. It did come out that Kim K has now declined a new offer to work with Balenciaga, and she issued a public statement calling them out to do something about this controversy, which is, I guess, what this lawsuit was meant to do. It was meant to do something, make people pay pay for what happened. Unfortunately, the lawsuit seems to be backfiring because now people are calling Balenciaga out for trying to place the blame on others when in reality it's highly unlikely that those photos and that campaign made it out the door without Balenciaga scrutiny and approval. And the uproar over this subsequent lawsuit is creating even more public interest than there would have been if they had just tried to resolve the problem behind closed doors instead of via a public lawsuit. Now, there's a fun name, actually, for this effect, which I learned from The Fashion Law, which is a website and blog all about fashion lawsuits. It's very fascinating. I highly recommend you check that out. I learned from them about the Streisand effect, named after Babs herself, because apparently one time in 2003, Barbara Streisand sued a photographer for $50 million for violation of her privacy. See, he had taken an aerial photo of her oceanside mansion, perched atop a cliff in Malibu, California. You frankly can't really see much in the photo other than how freaking huge this mansion was, and I'm a little uncertain what her and her lawyers were thinking when filing this lawsuit, to be frank. The photo was posted on the California Coastal Records Project website, which is a site dedicated to showcasing coastal imagery of California and documenting environmental erosion to try to influence lawmakers to do something about it. So she sues this photographer for $50 million for taking an aerial photo very far away of her mansion, saying it invaded her privacy. The lawsuit ultimately was dismissed, and Babs was ordered to pay the photographer's legal fees on top of that, which was a total of $170,000. So she sued and then ends up having to pay him $170,000. At the time of the lawsuit, when she filed it, the photo had been downloaded 6 total times, 2 of which by Barbara's own lawyers. After she filed the lawsuit, the website received 420,000 visits in 1 month. The Streisand effect. You're filing a lawsuit to try to make something go away, and it in fact makes it much worse. And Balenciaga seems to be experiencing just that. Frankly, if it wasn't for their lawsuit, I probably wouldn't have been as intrigued in this story, and I wouldn't be making this video. So there you go. Streisand effect. The lawsuit is filed in New York State court, and it awaits response now from the defendants, 𝗓𝗡𝗥𝗧 and 𝗪𝗓𝗓𝗏𝗓𝗓𝗓. But the PR fallout from this controversy will probably linger for a while after this case, which will probably settle outside of court. If you like this video, please consider supporting my work by subscribing to this channel, liking this video, becoming a member here on YouTube by clicking the little join button down below, or joining me over on Patreon, where we have a private Discord chat, behind the scenes stuff, and so much more. Thank you especially to my royal patrons, Old Man Pence, Fork McSpoon, Ellen L, Daniel Taylor, and Leeja, and a very special thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, 𝗦𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 and 𝗪𝗏𝗧𝗏. Your generosity is greatly appreciated, and it makes this channel what it is, so thank you! If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably also like my video all about the Nazi origins of Adidas. Thanks so much for watching, have a good day, bye-bye!